afternoon. It is my honor to introduce one of our first panelists, the Honorable Judge Dante Bugg. He is a native of Newport News, Virginia, and he serves on the Circuit Church as the Circuit Church Judge for the 19th Judicial Court in Fairfax County. Prior to taking the bench in March of 2019, he served as a substitute judge and was the owner of the Bugg Law Firm, PLCC. He received his Juris Doctorate from the T.C. Williams School of Law at the University of Richmond and his Bachelor of Arts in Criminology and Criminal Justice from the University of Maryland. Thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Pleasure to meet you all.
Thank you, sir. I'm Jordan Moody, the student representative onto the school board here. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And I am hippopotamus happy, elephant elated to introduce our next panelist. That is none other than Mr. Jack Ezell, and he is the founder and chief executive officer of Zell Technologies, LLC, and Zell Tech Training Solutions. He is a graduate of North Carolina A&T State University and holds an MBA degree from the Ohio State University, a retired USAF colonial. Jack has spearheaded Zell Tech's growth from a small Hampton Roads-based consulting firm into two multifaceted engineering, manufacturing, and advanced technology corporations with operations in multiple locations throughout the United States and abroad. He is a recognized leader in the introduction of leading edge technologies to support critical national and homeland security activities. Thomas, who do we have next?
Next up, we have Mr. Jerry Slugger Forrest. Forrest was born in Lafayette, LA, Louisiana, but moved to Virginia as a young child when his father enlisted in the Navy. His boxing aspirations began after a series of high school senior brawls convinced Forrest that he had the aptitude to compete in the sweet science. Accumulating a 34-5 amateur record, Forrest won gold medals 4 times at the Virginia State Golden Gloves Tournament, 4 times at the Washington, D.C. Regionals Tournament, twice in the California Tournament of Champions, and once at the North Carolina Golden Gloves. He also competed in the National Golden Gloves Tournament twice and made it to the semifinals of the 2012 Olympic qualifiers. His ring nickname Slugger was given to him at birth by his grandmother. Forrest turned pro in 2012, winning 7 of his first 9 bouts. Those 2 early career setbacks paved the way for a rededicated Forrest to win his next 18 fights. Following an impressive win against the 19-2 Joshua Tufte, Forrest challenged the unbeaten prospect Jeremiah Franklin on July 12, 2019, live on Showtime's ShowBox series. While starting his boxing journey, Forrest got married and now has 3 children. To make ends meet, he had a career as a nuclear electrician, working for Huntington Ingalls Industries on submarines and aircraft carriers for 10 years. Nearing the end of 2019, Forrest made the decision to move on and fully focus on boxing. He is now heavily involved with charitable causes in his community, helping to steer inner city youth away from the crime and street life. Forrest is active in programs such as the Gladiator School of Boxing, Together Our Lives Change, and the Future Actors and Media Makers Project, all of which provide kids with academic, athletic, and vocational training. Thank you very much for coming for our panel today, sir.
Thomas, if you could you go ahead and introduce Mr. Cast too as well?
Our next panelist is Mr. Stephen Cast. Cast is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the United Way of the Virginia Peninsula. The United Way of the Virginia Peninsula is a 501c3 that has served the peninsula community for over 75 years. The organization brings people together from all over the community, government, business, faith groups, and other nonprofits, along with citizens to identify and tackle our most serious problems. To accomplish this, the United Way builds partnerships with other funders, municipalities, and community organizations. As of April 15th, 2016, Steve Cast ended his remarkable 32-year career with the Boys and Girls Club of the Virginia Peninsula, and Steve helped grow the organization from a single club serving only 250 boys to the premier youth developmental organization in the community, serving over 9,000 boys and girls from ages 6 to 18 at 25 club sites. The footprint of the peninsula is large, spanning the cities of Newport News, Hampton, Williamsburg, Portsmouth, Suffolk, Franklin, and the Eastern Shore. Steve was the fourth executive director in the 70-year history of the Boys and Girls Club of the Virginia Peninsula. Steve was designated field consultant for the Boys and Girls Club, and in that capacity traveled to assist club organizations across the country. He was also the owner and served as president of the Virginia Alliance of Boys and Girls Club, where he led an effort to raise private and public dollars for clubs across the state. In 2015, due to a management agreement, he became the president and CEO of Boys and Girls Clubs of Southeast Virginia. Steve was further honored in 2003 as a distinguished member of the Academy of the Boys and Girls Club. In 2005, Steve received the Skies Award of Professional Excellence at the Southeast Boys and Girls Club Leadership Conference and was awarded the National Boys and Girls Club Contribution to the Profession Award in 2012. He continues to do great work for the community, and we are honored to have him here today.
Yes. Next, we have Mr. Tyrese Ty Ruff, who is the owner and creator of Ruff Customs, a dual integrated business that specializes in shoe customs and restorations, as well as web development and design. He is 22 years old, and he has been running Ruff Customs for about 4 years now. He graduated from Denby High School, but was a Warwick Raider at heart and is currently studying computer science at Norfolk State University.
Next up, we have Mr. Tristan Chip Jackson. Tristan Chip Jackson is a nationally recognized photographer, videographer, program director, and promoter from Newport News, VA. In 2006, Chip and his friends founded No Days Off, a video production team. Since then, Chip has worked with the national recording artists, including Ink, Quan, Pusha T, and several others. In 2016, Chip co-founded a workshop-style program called FAM, which stands for the Future Actors and Media Makers, designed to teach participants usable trades and skill sets while encouraging and helping develop their unique creative voices and perspective through film and photography. Thank you very much for being here today.
And last but certainly not least, a true mentor to me, we have Mr. Antoine Bethea, who is a former American football safety who played in the NFL, the National Football League, for 14 seasons. He played college football for Howard University and was drafted by the Indianapolis Colts in the 6th round of the 2006 NFL Draft. Mr. Bethea is also a graduate of Denby High School. If we could at this time, let's very briefly flood the chat and welcome each of our panelists here as we thank you so much for joining with us today. And as we begin, you know that we're talking about boss moves. We want to know how we can be as successful as you all are. That's our goal, to be just like you all. And so we want to first thank you once again for taking the time to join us. But I have a question, the first question that I want to open up to you. And that is that oftentimes all we see is the stuff that's written on papers. We see the good stuff. But that often leads to the misconception that errors do not happen to those who are successful. So could we start just briefly, if a couple of you could start by, not naming your challenges, but first acknowledging that everyone is going to have challenges. And secondly, how can you handle with the lemons in which life gives you and turn them into lemonade? Mr. Forrest, I see you unmuted first, so you can go ahead and take it away.
Well, I just always say that you take your talents and you got to recognize them and harness them. I've always felt that you can always do two things with your talents. You can do right or you can do wrong. My biggest suggestion to anyone is it's not that it's not important to find your talents. That's the easy part. The hardest part is finding something productive to do with your talents. So I always say, once you find your talent, you find what you love, you find that niche. I say then you have to further, you got to pick your friends, you have to pick the surroundings around you. You have to be smart enough to know that, your talent alone isn't going to take you where you want to go, that it's hard work, it's dedication. So I always say just find people that's been successful in your lane and do what they've done.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Did anyone else want to answer that question or give their advice on that?
Yeah, this is Jack Azell. Again, thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you today. I always like to say it's good being the oldest person and probably the only real suit on an audience like a panel like this, but thank you. Let me just say that roadblocks and challenges are inevitable in life. Everyone witnesses them at some point and to some degree. The key is to just get back up when you fail. You think about why you failed and you move on. My secret is not to think too much about the mistake. I think Mr. Bethea would probably appreciate this, but some of the best advice that I ever received was from a football defensive back who said that he doesn't dwell very much on when he's beaten on a pass play. He just gets up and gets ready for the next one. He thinks about it and prepares for the next game. So with me in life, I just work harder when things don't work and just look forward to the next opportunity.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Ezell. And we're going to close with Mr. Bethea in this question.
Yes, I would say just like Ms. Ezell just touched on, challenges, bumps in the roads, hurdles, they're going to come regardless of whatever profession that you're in. I think the true what you'll find in a true champion and somebody that excels in their prospective field, you find out how did they overcome those obstacles. And I think that's the most important part, where you have some guys that's like Jerry said, that's very talented, that was more talented than other people, but when they came to those crossroads or those challenges in life or their career, they didn't know how to handle them, or they didn't handle them correctly. So for me, just knowing that regardless of what I'm doing, I'm gonna come across some things that it's gonna be tough to overcome. But if I could come out of those situations, not taking it as a L, but taking it as a lesson learned, that would definitely help you in life.
I'm going to follow that up with the next question, that being, having people to look up to and inspire you as you work towards your goal is very important. Who are some of the people in your life that have served as role models, and how have they contributed to your overall success? So anyone that would like to speak on that can unmute and start us off.
I would love to start if that's okay. And thank you guys for the introduction. It's not often you get to hear your eulogy before they're putting you under. So I appreciate that. One of the guys that I thought about when I saw the pre-written questions about who do I look up to or a role model who's affected me, a lot of the guys on the call might remember former Chief of Police George Austin, who has passed away. Chief Austin was a hardworking man, walked the beat in the East End of Newport News, then rose through the ranks and became the Chief of Police of Newport News. And I think the first African-American Chief of Police of a city this size in the South region. And the reason I looked up to George is because he always looked at the big picture and he always had a positive attitude. And I'm a storyteller. I'm going to tell this quick story. When George became Chief of Police, he was invited to a local country club to speak as the Chief of Police. When he got there, he was greeted at the door and asked to go through the kitchen. He couldn't walk through the front door. This was the Chief of Police who was invited. He held his head up. He walked through the kitchen door. He spoke to the group. And when he finished, he thanked them and thanked them for the meal that they served. And he said, but if you don't mind, I'm going to walk out the front door. He was always positive and he led by example. And I could tell you a million chief stories, but I'll be quiet.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cast. Does anyone else wish to speak on this question?
I'll hop in on that one. First and foremost, I would like to thank you all for the invitation and your time today. In thinking about this, when I saw that question, obviously, first and foremost, my family, my mom, my grandmother, my father, just from a standpoint of seeing them get out of bed every day, go to work, provide for a family, being born in the East End section of the city, and now being an adult, looking back and realizing that they were doing quite a bit without a lot of resources. The other thing that came to mind are a lot of the influences that I, quite frankly, picked up in the school system. Teachers, coaches, Coach Nichols, when I thought I was good at football, and I really wasn't. But folks like him, Coach Pollard, that really, you can tell when they talk to you that they saw you, that they understood who you were as a person, they could relate to you. And they were really feeding into us at the time a lot of life lessons that we didn't necessarily get. Mostly it was focused on sports or things of that nature. But there's a lot when you look back on those types of folks really set the example of being college graduates, being professionals, to give you that idea. Because like I said, being from the East End, you may not see that every day, but seeing someone that looks like you, that has gone on to places that you hope to aspire to get to, those were a lot of role models that when you look back on life, that those people fed into you, that I think if you pay attention to what's going on around you, have quite a few of folks like that.
Thank you very much, Judge. Is there anyone else?
Yeah, I saw Mr. Jackson. He had unmuted. Mr. Jackson?
Yes. One of the people that I actually that was kind of a role model that I watched was Terry Fenner, the vice principal at Heritage. When I was coming up in my late teens and in early 20s, he would have these rock the mic nights at the local clubs. And it actually gave an outlet to a lot of the young, rappers and artists, the hip hop culture. It gave us a place to actually come and be able to exercise and practice our abilities during these times. And me shooting video and taking doing photography, these are the first place where I met a lot of people, and I was actually got to practice my video skills. And before I knew what I was doing with the camera, these were the people that I practiced on. And I really admired him. And we probably wouldn't have a gladiator school or fan project working with the youth right now if I hadn't seen him do that, because I literally watched it affect people's lives for the good. Like myself, my first interviews and my first jobs with the camera I got from him introducing me to people in 103 Jams and at the Hampton Coliseum and things of this nature. So the fact that he created a platform for young people to be able to express themselves through their art was always admirable to me. And I always definitely looked up to him for that, because a lots of times we may point our fingers, at young people and say they didn't do it like how we did it, or they not doing this, not doing that. But he actually created an avenue and gave young people a platform to be able to express themselves through their art. So he was definitely someone that I looked up to.
Yes, sir. And he's still doing that to this day. I mean, we applaud Mr. Fenner for everything that he's doing. And this is just a testimonial, a story that your work does not go unnoticed. So we really do want to thank you, Mr. Fenner, for all that you have done and all that you continue to do. As we know, this is a panel for our young men, our men who aspire and who are one day going to be in your shoes. And if truth were to be told, if we could take that mask off for just a little while, we know that sometimes we are viewed according to society's standards as weak if we ask for help. And that's an amazing segue, because we've talked about your role models, but now we want to know, how can we break down that thought process and feel okay with asking others for help when needed to assist us in reaching our goals?
I could touch on that. It's funny. I was having this conversation the other day, and somebody asked me in my earlier in my career, what would I have done differently? And that was one of the things was I would have asked more questions. I just didn't know. And obviously, I think in a lot of settings, people feel the same way, where you don't want to be that guy or that person that's asking the questions. You don't want to look like the dummy, the one that, doesn't understand what's going on. But if I could look back 14, 15 years down the line, that would definitely be the thing that I would do, instead of having to go through those trials and tribulations and actually finding things out the hard way. Definitely just asking for help, asking those questions. What can I do to be better? What can I do to not go down this road? And just asking, asking, like you said, basically just asking for help. What can I do to be better, man? And don't ever look at it as being the weak person in the room if you're asking for help. I think now, just as grown men, just getting around a group of men like this that's on this panel, and just having a good nature of solid human beings around you, being able to lean on somebody, that's definitely pertinent and something that you need in your life.
Let me just add too, this is Jack Azell. My motto is never be afraid to ask for help. You kind of need to be careful who you ask, but we can always learn from the lives of others. In my case, I started a business cold after I'd had a career in the military. I'd never been in the private industry. I had never done anything. And for the record, I went over to, it was then the Price Club, and it's now Costco. And I bought a loose leaf notebook on how to start your own business. And I went back home over my attic, and that's when I launched what has turned out to be a huge business. Along the way, I was never hesitant to ask other successful businessmen what they had done and how they had done it. And that has been the key. So I say that to you. Please, please, it's not a sign of weakness to seek out those who've done well. And in fact, most of them will want to do that. I know now I do a lot of mentoring because I want to give back to those who gave to me.
Thank you. I saw Mr. Ruff had unmuted.
Yeah, I just was going to piggyback off of what Mr. Bethea had said about being able to ask those around you is not a sign of weakness, and surrounding yourself around those individuals who are on a similar path as you, or heading in a similar direction as you, or have already made it to where you're trying to get. Obviously, they've had some type of success in getting to where they're at. So asking for that assistance and asking for that help, I feel is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength, that you understand that you may be weak in certain areas and that you can improve, and not looking to do it all by yourself, but also looking for outreach, help from the community, help from mentors, help from those individuals who've already necessarily made it to where you're at, or like I said, is already ahead of you in the direction that you're willing to go in. So I definitely say, piggybacking off of that, is surround yourself around individuals who are on a similar guideline or a similar plan as yourself.
If I could hop in on that, one thing I would suggest to you is to keep it in perspective. Other people don't know what's going on either, right? They're afraid to ask those questions, but you'll have people that will put on this air of knowing everything. One of the things I learned when I first got to law school was the first time I really felt intimidated in an academic setting, right? You're in class, professor asks a question, people's hands are shooting up, and I'm sitting in the back thinking to myself, I don't really necessarily know if I follow all of this. But over time, what I realized is my classmates were just as lost as I was. Now you have people, because there's a mental game that they want to get a one up on you and make it seem like they know everything. But when it came time to have study groups, when it came time for exams, when it came time for the bar exam, you realize that everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's in the same position of trying to perfect their craft, trying to be better at what they're doing. It's the folks that are willing to show that vulnerability and put themselves out there and say, hey, I don't understand this, and I want a little bit more help on this. You'll be surprised at how much assistance you'll receive if you show others that you're eager, interested, and motivated to do it. But keep it in perspective that most other people are just as lost as you are. That's why we have teachers, why we have professors, why people have to practice at their craft. A lot of the hesitancy to ask questions, I think, comes sometimes from comparing yourself to other people thinking they have it all together. And most times you're not accurate in that assumption.
I would also add that it's also an attitude of humbleness. By me being a professional fighter, it's different being a boss, and you have to listen to your whole entire team. So I not only have to ask questions, but I also have to receive this information and process it the right way. So for me, you have to have, what we call it at the shipyard, a questioning attitude, which is you gotta have the know-how and the want to become better. So if you don't understand something, we don't necessarily look at it in the shipyard and even in the gym as help, but it's a questioning attitude. It's wanting to become better and wanting to be more. So you're trying to indulge everything you can around all the settings around you, all the people around you. You're trying to soak all that into your body. So I always say, don't look at it as being scared to ask for help, but have a questioning attitude. Want to be successful. Don't run away from it. But you can't be successful if you're not asking the person next to you for the help that's needed to be assisted. A lot of us just, you have to swallow your pride, and if you really want that little push, if you really want the knowledge that you're really asking to receive, you have to just humble yourself and be willing to accept the knowledge, good or bad.
That transitions really well into one of our next questions. We have an audience member who asks, how do you overcome difficulty in school? Obviously, it is sometimes hard to overcome the fear of failing. What are some tips that you would give to the audience members and the watchers about pushing through and overcoming setbacks as you work forward to achieve your goals?
I could start off. Setbacks, that's a mindset. By me being a boxer, my last fight, getting knocked down, getting back up, that's all a part of a mindset. On TV or on camera, it may look worse than what's actually in the inside of the person. When you're talking about success, when you're talking about the will to just overcome and keep on fighting or to keep doing what you believe in, that's a mental mindset that goes beyond the body. That's more so of what you're putting into your mind. What are you feeding? What's being added to your daily regimen? So I would tell anybody, it's not so much the fear of losing or the fear of failing. It's the fear of not being able to get back up and just regurgitating or redoing what you failed at the first time. You have to become a master at your craft. So in order to do that, I tell you this, on a bag, I fell 1,000 times. I will throw the same punch 1,000 times. And it's a fail, but I call it a noble fail because I'm edging to get better at something. So I just always feel, you can't run from the failure. You have to embrace it and go full speed, embrace it and just be smart about it. There's no such thing as failing. There's only stepping stones. So use them as a learning experience.
On that, I would add also, again, and I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record, keep it in perspective. In the moment when you fail, we can sit here and tell you that you got to be resilient, but in the moment when you fail, it really hurts, right? It feels like you're not going to get it accomplished. First exam I remember failing in life was the bar exam, right? And I know for sure for 2-3 weeks after I got those results, I said I was never going to take it. I wasn't going to take it again because I had a major failure. Took the bar exam and now it's past me, okay? So that's a blip on the radar in the big scheme of my career, but in the moment, it felt terrible. I applied to be a judge multiple times and was passed over. And I'm a competitive person from my track career and just, quite frankly, being from the East End of Newport News. I promise you, every time they selected someone else to be a judge, I felt like they got it wrong. I was the person that they should have selected. And I was hurt about that because it was a public failure, because these are positions that we run. It's a public election, if you will. So people know about that failure. That's not one, I messed up and I can kind of sweep it under the rug. But again, keeping it in perspective that if you maintain your desire, learn from it, go back to the drawing board. Okay, this time I took this approach and I wasn't successful. What can I do not only the next time when an opening comes up, but what can I do before another opening comes up to position myself in the right place so that I don't feel that feeling of failure and missing out on one of my goals. So keep that in perspective because you'll fail. I think Mr. Bethel said, anyone else that we got a boxer on, for as many races as I won in track, I lost quite a few, right? And I probably learned more from the losses because you had to go back and kind of adjust things back and forth, but keep that in perspective and don't let each single failure be much more of a setback than it needs to be.
That's excellent advice. I would also add too that when you fail, and I know I failed a number of times, it's a mindset. You can't be afraid in the future to take risk and to try to do other things. Don't fall in the trap that you're going to just play it safe and do it. I always tell people, you'll never steal second base if you keep your foot on first. So just from failure, you learn, but also take some chances later on.
That's great.
Yeah, actually, but they had said it earlier. We don't lose, we learn, and it's you being attentive and paying attention to the lessons in your quote unquote failures. We got to pay attention to the lessons and show perseverance at the end of the day. Slug's last fight was an actual great example, and he's like, that's my motivation from now on. Slug got knocked down 3 times in the first 3 rounds. And anybody knows anything about boxing, that's losing 2 rounds. When you get knocked down, you lose 2 points. And Slug came back in 7 rounds and won every single round to make it a draw. And he started off in the 4th round down by 6 rounds. And there's literally only 6 more rounds to win. And he had to win every single one. So yeah, that perseverance is usually the one who perseveres through. That's the one that's where the strength is. The strength isn't in quitting. The strength is in perseverance. That's at the end of the day, that's what we're all trying to do is see the job through. It's not always about it's a lot of the time it's about starting and completing the task, and you want to keep that in your mind the whole time.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this question before we move on?
Well, I think everybody has probably said this in a different way, but a lot of people who fail sometimes will quit, will stop. You have to get back in the game. If you don't, you're going to guarantee that you fail. So it's your choice at that point for you to get back in the game. I use this example. I spoke to a group of kids last year, and I had a goal of running every day 3 miles in the morning. And I asked them what the most important thing I could do to run, to be able to meet my goal. And none of them raised their hand. And I said, the most important thing I can do every morning is get up, get in the game, go out and run. So if you fail one day, get back to school and get at it again. I'm sure Antoine and Jerry and all, if they get knocked down, they're getting up. If they get beat on one pass, which is very rare, Antoine, but they're gonna get right back in the game and make sure they're gonna succeed.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll even say I just started really talking about this, but even me personally, I ran to be the student representative onto the school board my 10th grade year. 10th grade year going into 11th grade, and I did not win. I got in 2nd place, and I'm not a friend of losing. And I'm going to be honest, I was not going to do exactly what Mr. Cass just said and get back in the game. But I'm a religious person, and I listened to a sermon coincidentally that the day before the application was due to run again, and the sermon was called "Again is Your Friend." And so that's what I want to say today, that, you may have failed once, you may have failed twice, you may have failed 5 times, but you've got to keep up going, because if you don't start, then you don't know how to finish. So no matter how much you fail, you have to keep on going. And I think that is an excellent segue into our next question. It's funny that you all have been touching on this a little bit, but we know we're going to compete in life. It's given, whether we're going to be competing in regards to the college acceptance process, an athletic endeavor, a job interview, anything. We know we're going to be competing, and we know that we always want to be viewed as a contender. So what are some of the tips that you can give us to help us to be that obvious choice to those who are interviewing us, whether it be the college admissions team or whether it be our athletic coaches or the other athletic teams? What is something that you can give us that we can know that whatever it is, this is how you can do it. It may not always lead to victory, but it sure will help. I'll go first to Mr. Bethea on that.
I think one of the most important things and one of the mottos I live by is bet on yourself. You know, you got to bet on yourself and you got to believe in yourself. I think the most important thing is that if you don't believe in yourself, how can the next man or the next woman believe in your abilities as well? So again, you know, and with that, you know, bet on yourself, that could be a broad scale, but within betting on yourself, that's hard work, that's perseverance, that's taking sacrifices. I think one of the big things that, you know, growing up in Newport News or wherever you're at, you know, it's sacrifices that you're going to have to take, you know. So when you go into these different, you know, you're walking into the gym, you're walking onto the field, you got to take those sacrifices where, you know, growing up, you know, my friends were doing X, Y, and Z in the summertime. My sacrifice was, you know, I'm going to 2 days, I'm going to practice. So again, you know, taking those sacrifices and just betting on yourself, believing in yourself. And at the end of the day, just looking yourself in the mirror. That's who you're competing against. You know, obviously, you know, it's people outside of you that you obviously won't have to compete against. But mentally, when you look in that mirror every morning when you get up, that's your biggest competition right there. So if you can overcome that person that you look at every day when you wake up, you're in a good place.
Yeah, the same, just piggybacking off of what they just said. The real competition is in the mirror. The real competition is within yourself. I know for me, right now I'm working on the set of A Walking Dead World Beyond. Every night we get a different the call sheets come out every night. We don't know today what time we got to go to work tomorrow. We may have finished rapping at 2 o'clock in the morning last night, and then the call sheet comes out at 3 o'clock and say, well, you got to be right back at work at 8 o'clock in the morning. This is how it goes. That fight to get up in the morning is because you know where you're trying to get into in your career. You know where you want to be. There is no excuse. We got a director. It's 100 people working on the set, and there's one director that's calling all the shots. And it gets to a point, we're out there 10, 12 hours. Everybody's ready to go, but we got to make the next shot go better than the last one, because that's what's going to allow us to go home, and it's what's going to actually propel everybody's career. So it's really about looking in the mirror, like you said, and getting the best out of yourself. You are your real competition. You have to challenge yourself and meet your own personal challenges. Everything else will fall in line.
Let me just add too that certainly those are all very great words, and you have to do that. But you also need to be aware that people are looking and watching at all times. I'm not suggesting that you don't be yourself, but you have to be a bit paranoid nowadays. People are constantly looking at you, monitoring that. So I say to the young people out in the audience, look, think about the little things, eye contact, saying thank you, doing those kinds of things that are going to leave a very positive image with people.
I would say on along those lines, I would echo what everyone else said, but I would also suggest to you a quote. There's a quote that I have talking about role models. One of my role models is an attorney, Johnny Cochran. You all may not even be old enough to recognize that name, but just look up. But it's a quote that I have on my desk. I've had it for quite a while. It's on a torn up piece of paper, but it says, I'm a big believer in the fact that life is about preparation, preparation, preparation. And I took that with me before I prepared for every case, because when you're in court, things are going to happen, and the more successful attorneys are the ones that are prepared for it. I still do that now when I take the bench every day. I'm not going to walk in here not knowing what case I have, what the issue is, at least having some understanding of what the law is on that. I think that applies to just about everything in life. If you're talking about a competitive thing, if it's something where you don't care about the outcome and you're fine with being 46 out of 200, then don't prepare. But if you're talking about sports, the preparation has to come in weightlifting, nutrition, going to practice. You're talking about academics. It has to come in paying attention in class, taking notes, reviewing said notes, and preparing for quizzes and tests, showing up for school. If you're talking about a job interview, do some research on the company that you're interviewing with. Great if you can find, especially now with LinkedIn and social media, have something. An example would be when I ran for judgeships. We're selected by senators and delegates that represent Fairfax County. I researched every senator and every delegate. I saw that one senator ran track at Maryland like I did. So you better believe in my statement, I had something about my experience as a track runner in Maryland to relate to that person. That's where preparation makes the difference, makes you much more competitive than just, there's going to be a level of people that have resumes. There's going to be a level of people that, come in, they have the suit on and everything's going to look great. But those are the type of things, that level of preparation that will separate you when it comes to competitive, or quite frankly, in whatever you're doing.
True.
That actually transitions very well into my next question, which is, can you give us pointers on how to be prepared, such as positive traits and personal strengths, and how to position yourself with the right people and in the right places for success? So Judge Buggs, since you were already talking about it, if you'd like to start out, and then we can go on to other people.
I think it's doing the research, it's doing the groundwork. Quite frankly, now with the internet, quite frankly, with YouTube, you can figure out how to do just about anything through a YouTube tutorial these days. I started an entire clothing line just watching YouTube videos, and over the pandemic, I taught myself how to DJ, all watching other people do it on YouTube. So it's that preparation that you have to put into it. But I'm sorry, Thomas, what was the second part of the question? I apologize.
It dealt with placing yourself in proximity to the right people and in the right places.
That's right. And I think Mr. Bethea touched on it, and some other folks have as well. It's easy to run with the crowd, right? I got plenty of friends from Newport News that got into a whole bunch of stuff they shouldn't have been involved in. There was times I was with them, but there was also something inside of me that suggested you might not want to be for the rest of this, right? You might want to step away from that. You really have to be honest with yourself about what your goals are, right? I went away for school for my first year at school, came back, spent the summer in Newport News, and realized that for what I wanted to achieve in life, it probably wasn't best for me to go back home every summer and keep running with the same groups, right? Because that was going to lead to a particular outcome. It's going to be uncomfortable. Quite frankly, you're going to have to put yourself in some situations where I can't see the attendees, but a lot of times you're going to be maybe the only minority in the room. You might be the only person, that's from Newport News, and you get somewhere else and they're making fun of your accent. It's going to be uncomfortable, but never be content with being the smartest person in the room. Never be content with being, the head honcho, because at that point, then you're stagnant and you're not achieving anything at that point.
Can I comment on setting yourself apart and sort of competing with folks? It's my belief that most jobs are earned before you even show up for the job interview, or most competitions are won well before you. And Judge Buggs, I'm a track guy also. And I knew when I stepped on the track that I was going to win, because I had prepared and I knew exactly what was going to happen. And a good friend of mine years ago told me to prepare yourself physical, mental, and moral. So, I guarantee you, if you build your reputation based upon a solid foundation, that you are going to set yourself apart from all the other people that may be competing for that job. And be confident. There's nothing wrong with being confident in your ability. If you've prepared and that you deserve that job, go in with the reputation you've built, and lead with kindness, and you will be successful and set yourself apart from others.
If I could just kind of backdoor Mr. Curse, that's completely true. Confidence is everything. Knowing and believing in yourself, that's huge. In boxing, of course, you guys probably, it's egotistical. We're considered cocky because of who we are. It's confidence in what you've done. My last fight, guys were asking me, how are you going to fight the guy? How are you going to beat him? My answer is always the same, which is I'm going to outbox him. When you're confident in what you've done, when you've done it correctly in whatever field it is, whether it's education or sports, if you're true to what you're doing, if you've done it the right way, if you haven't cut any shortcuts, it takes about 10,000 hours to become a master at anything. It's not about the practice. It's about the perfect practice. It's about doing the small things when you go home. Like they said, it's about the preparation, putting your goals down on a sheet of paper, reading the goals. So preparation is key. It's bigger than just trying to do something and competing. The biggest opposer in anything that you're going to have in life is you. There's no one else that can control your destiny but you. When you're talking about competing, it's how are you competing? Guys like Chip can tell you, I'm in the gym all the time. But that means nothing if I'm in the gym doing it incorrectly. That means nothing if I'm in the gym and I'm not doing it and I'm not going full force. That's why I take myself and I remove myself and I go into a camp. Sometimes you have to take yourself out of a comfortable environment to become better. People don't realize it's sacrifices in everything you do. You know, you guys all know if success was easy, everyone would be successful. That's not the case. The case is you have to make sure that your consistency is your truth. Your consistency is the right way. Those are the real fundamentals that you have to take into consideration. Guys, you know, they're always fast to say, you know, hey, I'm doing it, I'm doing it, I'm doing it. That's neither here nor there. Or you doing it the right way. What are you doing when you're going home? Who are you talking to? What are you watching at home? So all that plays a huge psyche in what you are and what you're trying to become. So just remember your intake and what you see, what you hear, your influence, your environment. All those things play a part of your psyche, which completely plays a part of your competition or role in anything you do.
Yes, sir. If we could at this time, I'd like to go to Mr. Ruff. He's a little bit younger. He's still in college. Could you answer this question, especially, you know, you're starting your own brand now. Could you answer this question that Thomas raised as well?
Yes, no problem. Can you repeat the question for me just so I'm clear?
Thomas?
Yeah, so it's about being prepared, but even more specifically, about placing yourself in the right crowd and the right places for success.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'd definitely say in my field, it's a little tough to put yourself in the right crowd because it's such a scarce field. It's not a lot of shoe content creators, especially not on the East Coast. We have a few, far and few in between, but the major shoe content creators are out on the West, out in like California area, the Bay Area. So as far as being on the East Coast, I really had no guidance besides an online presence. I didn't really have any type of physical guidance or a mentor that I could look up to as far as becoming a shoe content creator. I knew individuals who were business owners. I knew individuals who were entrepreneurs, and I was able to look to them for guidance as far as a business aspect. So actually being able to run a business, start a business, investing in yourself, things that you need to look for, things that you need to be mindful of when it comes to working with clients or hiring employees, things like that. But as far as the actual content of my job, I had to learn myself online. So it took a lot of research. Back to what the judge was saying, it took a lot of research. It took a lot of investing time outside of just when I wanted to set aside time for development of my business, but personal time. Not going out to parties. Like I said, I was in college, so it was parties every week, every weekend, during the week. So taking myself out of those scenarios and remove myself from that nightlife and investing that time back into myself or investing that time back into my business is kind of what helped me to thrive and get to where I'm at now. So I definitely say if you have people that are on a similar path, but not the exact same path, surround yourself with those people. My people were, like I said, business entrepreneurs and business owners that were a little bit older than me. Like I said, I am the youngest on the panel. I noticed that, like I said, I'm only 22. So a lot of my mentors are very much older than me. So I got a lot of guidance and a lot of wisdom from those around me on a business level. But as a content creator, a lot of it was, like I said, online based. It wasn't really in person.
Yes, sir. And I think that this is a perfect transition into our next question. And Tyrese, I'd like for you to answer this one first
Okay.
as well, and then we can go to our other panelists. We hear a lot about how our past follows us. What we do, even on Snapchat, it says that it disappears, but nothing is ever fully gone. What would you say about the decisions we make now and how they can impact our future success?
And they're pivotal. Every decision you make, I tell all of my friends this. I tell anybody who asks me for assistance or guidance, I tell them that every single choice, every decision you make has a reaction. everything you do, whether that reaction is positive, whether that reaction is neutral, whether it's negative, everything you do is going to have a reaction to it. So if you choose to put negativity in the air, if you choose to go on social media and post something that you know may have a negative outcome, you cannot then later on, you know what I'm saying, expect that outcome to just fade away or disappear or people not to approach it. Because I'm telling you, once you get to the top, or once you get in a position where you may, or others may feel like you're above them, or may feel like you're more successful than them, then at that point, that's when they begin to gun for you. They'll look for anything. They'll look for anything that you've possibly done in your past. It could be 10, 12 years. It could be 1 year in the past, but they will find something to be able to try to equal the playing field or to get you off of that mantle so that they can take over. So everything you do, it is pivotal. It is pivotal. Like I said, whether it's positive or whether it's negative.
This is Jack Azell. Let me add to that. The lure of social media. Be very, very careful about what you post, what you do, what your activities on social media. It will be there. It's always there. It's available in the cloud, other places. I think you can look in the political arena now and you can see individuals who've had to bail out of potential political races for things they did or said 20 years ago. I constantly see that in job applications. A number of people who look great, but all of a sudden their Facebook posts catch up with them. So I understand the value of communications and what you get with social media, but you need to be very, very cautious about what you put there because it's permanent.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that. You all are coming up in a much different time and age. I think a lot of the older folks on this panel would suggest if social media was around, we might not be in the positions we are in now because everybody, has their transgressions, right? But one thing I would suggest is I would echo that, be very mindful of it. I can tell you a lot of times in cases, it ends up becoming evidence in a courtroom. And that's the worst place for it to be shown. There's this thought that if you put it on Snapchat, once it disappears, it's gone. I can tell you from experience, I've had clients where if the right subpoena is sent to the right person, Snapchat will turn over a lot of stuff that they have kept that you had no idea they had. And it comes with a little disc and you can see everything, even the messages directly between people. That usually doesn't play out very well. So be very, very mindful of that. Again, the internet kind of changes things because most employers nowadays are going to do a Google search on you when you're applying for a job. I think a lot of people do it in dating now just to understand the other person they're about to meet. So what you put out there, and I think there was one of the topics we may get into is in terms of, your brand, what you put out there is very, very important. That is one thing you control. Is what you put on social media. I've had cases where, the charge is possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, and for whatever reason, the guy's on his Instagram singing into the camera, waving a gun. Well, the prosecutor just needs to put that in and sit down, right? And that's unnecessary. What's out there, you control that, and you got to be very, very mindful of that. Because what happens is you get the likes, you get the momentary coolness for the 24 hours it's up, but then down the road, when you've changed, when you've advanced, society doesn't necessarily have that common collective mindset right now that people can overcome some of these things. So you got to be mindful of that.
I also, moving a little bit away from social media, and I find myself every time I see someone has made a mistake and I watch the way they react, and I often want to write their script for them on what they should say. But I believe if you've lived a good life and you've built your reputation, you might have a little credit in the bank if you make a mistake and you say, I made a mistake. Here's what I did. I'm sorry. Here's how I'm going to hold myself accountable for it. And I ask everyone for forgiveness. I believe if most people who have made a mistake, that I'm not talking about the chronic ones, but the ones who have made a mistake, that the folks who know you best will forgive you and allow you to move on, and you can continue to do the great things that you were already doing. Those who run from their mistakes, don't take accountability for them, are the ones who I believe are eventually going to be unsuccessful.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to shortly say, just take accountability for yourself. That's it. Just take accountability for your actions. Mistakes are always going to be made, but just take accountability. And like I said, stay true to it. All mistakes are not bad mistakes. Some of them are just learning passages. So you have to realize that when you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world, but you have to have that mindset that is just a learning situation. And once you get that kind of mindset, yeah, it usually works and pans out.
Thank you very much. Did you want to say something, Judge Bug?
I'm sorry, I was nodding to a deputy in the courtroom. My apologies.
I'm going to finish up on my end, and then Jordan will have a few more questions. But my final question, and we're going to start with Mr. Bethea, is how do you choose to put yourself out there, and how can this impact future success? What tips can you share to us in regards to personal branding?
I think the most important part about the branding is being authentic. I think we've all we kind of talked about it throughout the entire panel. You don't want to just, obviously you want to put up the good stuff, but you want to be authentic. You want to present yourself as I'm a real person. I've made mistakes in my life. I've learned from my mistakes. But again, you just want to be an authentic person. And when it comes to branding, and I always kind of talk about it, like what do when you leave this earth, what do you want people to think about you? So just as far as me, if I leave this earth and all they can say is Antoine was a good football player, I failed. I failed. So me being able to impact my community, impact my people around me, that's what I want my brand to be. Obviously, 10 years down the line, I want them to be like, he's a serial entrepreneur. Oh yeah, and he played ball too. So again, you have to figure out what it is that you want people to think about you, how they feel about you, and obviously, again, when I wore that jersey on my back, the biggest brand was the name on the back of my jersey. That was Buffet. What my mom, what my dad, what they worked for, what I was able to work for throughout my career and continue to work for. That's the biggest thing. So again, keep your nose clean. Just like the last topic we talked about, the things that you put out there on social media, the things that's out there on the web, and just your reputation alone, it's going to go with you a long way. So again, just be cognizant of what you're doing, how you're acting, and the way you're moving.
Yes, thank you, sir. Anyone else with that question?
It's a great question. Authenticity is one of the keys. One of the things I remember most, someone asked me, they said, what would you like to have? The words would you like to have on your tombstone? I thought for a while and then I said, he cared. Okay. So think about how you would like to be remembered and how you'd like to live your life. And that's part of your brand.
I like to say in creating your brand, especially as young people, realizing that relationships, how important relationships are, they're very vital. And giving people positive messages and keeping the positivity going. Like the old folks say, high tides raise all boats. So you want to definitely be able to keep a good spirit about yourself, and what's done in the dark is what's the most important. Not when the lights are on. All the work, like say with Slug in the gym, all the real work is done when there's nobody around, where there are no cameras, where there are no lights. That's when you're alone, when you watching BET or you scrolling on the YouTube, when you know that there's something that you should be doing, when you know there's some extra work that you need to be putting in, it's some study time, it's an extra chapter you got to read or whatever. That's where the real work comes in, is when no one's looking. When everybody's looking, it's game time. That's when the show is. But like I said, in the process of creating film, we have pre-production, you got production and post-production, and then you see the show. So we say in the gym, prior preparation prevents poor performance. So back to that preparation thing, creating your brand is done by yourself in the dark, is focusing and locking in and making sure you're prepared and making sure you're on it, because it's going to show when it's game time. That's how you, in my mind, that's how you want to create your brand. is when you're alone, when everyone is not looking. That's where the real work is done.
If I can add just very quickly, I would also suggest once you've created your brand, you got to do stuff to protect your brand. And by that, I'm meaning understanding that you are the brand. So taking care of yourself. It's easy to get into a mindset of constant hustle, constant work, and everything's about work, work, work. I would suggest to you, with everything we've seen after this pandemic and other things that are going on, take care of yourself, take care of your own mental health. Know when there's a time from a personal standpoint that I need to take a rest, right? I need to make sure from a physical standpoint, I have my mental health together, I have my wellness together, so that when it does come to competition time, when it comes time to perform, I'm keen on it, I'm ready to go, and I haven't burned myself out. I think sometimes we don't necessarily focus on that enough. We focus way too much on the accolade and the achievement, but there's a path and a process to get there. You see Antoine Bethea, and he had a long, successful career in the NFL, but I assure you that the man had an off season, right? You have to take time for yourself, take time for and also to enjoy life, quite frankly, because you'll get a lot more richness and fulfillment out of those accomplishments if you're happy in other areas and aspects of your life. So keep it, again, I know I say it over and over again, but keep that in perspective as well, and protect your brand by protecting yourself and your wellness.
Yes, sir. Well, I want to thank each of you. And I can say I have personally been poured into as a consequence of today's panel. I want to thank each and every panelist for all that you have done. First, for taking time out of your schedule to come and talk with us today. We really, really, really do appreciate it. This has been an amazing Student Empowerment Month, and we want to give a big shout out to our youth development team under the direction of Mr. Michael Nichols for all that they have done, and of course, our extended teams, both for More Than a Princess, which is our females a portion, and our Rise group, which is for our males. And so we want to thank you for everything. Students, please don't forget that we do have our World Changer Shadow Day tomorrow, which is like a virtual field trip. You get to explore people from mechanics to barbers to judges. So we want to thank you all so much for that, and we're looking forward to your attendance and to the experience in which that will be. And then join us on this Friday from 6:30 to 7, or excuse me, from 6:30 to 7:30, as we will spotlight some amazing world changers in Newport News Public Schools. I am Jordan Moody, your student representative to the school board. I want you to stay safe, stay healthy, but most importantly, stay great. And I will see you soon. Bye-bye.